heavyweight or from super heavyweight as the amateurs, we moved down in weight, not by a massive amount, and we come to Lawrence Okolie. What more needs to be said about this man? Similarly to Joyce, he's not had too many pro fights. It seems bizarre looking at him and sort of having followed his career from turning pro and seeing him live a few times during his sort of early stages, that he still only had 17 fights, and what he has achieved in those 17 fights, adding in the fact that he's very limited as an amateur, was not necessarily the most experienced or seasoned boxer before turning pro, to have got to the Olympics in the first place, to then turn professional and achieve what he has achieved, is bordering on unbelievable. I think a lot of fans have taken a bit of time to warm to him, and some of his lesser performances sort of sit fresh in the mind. Of those 17 pro wins, 14 of them have come with inside the distance. And yet, if you speak to a lot of boxing fans, it's the ones that went the distance that are the sort of abiding standout memories of Lawrence Okolie. There was the domestic clash, sort of bitter rivalry with Isaac Chamberlain that headlined the O2 maybe a little bit too early for both men. There's a lot of pressure on them, especially as a young, inexperienced fighter. Lawrence got the job done. It wasn't the tidiest of fights, but when that's your big chance, your big statement win, it left a little bit of an underwhelming feeling with a lot of fans and a lot of viewers. Follow that up not too long after with the Matty Askin performance. Again, another win, another W on the record, but another underwhelming, dare I say, not the most satisfying win for him, despite picking up a British title. From that point on, Okolie's never looked back. He's been absolutely sensational. He's put together, I think, 6 or 7 stoppage wins and looked devastating doing it. In amongst that, there's been the change of trainer to Shane McGuigan, someone I rate very, very highly, and I know many others do. Hopefully adding a bit more to Lawrence. Maybe Lawrence has learned himself from those earlier performances and the fights, and he's starting now to use his reach and his size and his power a little bit more effectively. Got to give credit to Shane for that as well, I suppose, as well as Lawrence himself. He's done exactly what anyone watching boxing wants a fighter to do. Already mentioned the British. He's a Commonwealth champion as well. He's then gone on and absolutely smashed his way to the European title. And of course, most recently, become a world champion in what is a very competitive division. He picked up the WBO title, again, absolutely dismantling his opponent, Buatsi, on the night there. He's had one defence, I think. He's got another one coming up. And he's in the unfortunate, I dare say, position of being in a cruiserweight division where there are a lot of tough fighters, but very few big names. And some of his defences, if he's going to hang around at the 200-pound division, they're not going to be the most glamorous of fights, and they're not going to be necessarily the easiest to sell. But from what he's done and the way he fights and what he brings, his presence, his ability, and ultimately that knockout power, he's a genuine headliner in the making. Now, I'm not one to advocate pushing people to pay-per-view and encouraging fans to pay more, but in terms of what he brings in the ring, what he delivers, the way he fights, and say some of the matches out there for him, that they're going to be good fights. He's going to, sounds a bit silly with some of the previous outings I've just talked about there, but he's going to bring entertainment. I think he's mixing it up. He's showing that he can deliver the knockout, he can deliver a finish, he can stop opponents, and that's a huge thing in terms of building the appeal of a fighter. Obviously, you're looking now as a world champion, despite having fewer than 20 fights, at these unifications. Like, is he going to fight Maurice Bradis? And it's definitely a fight in the making. There's been mentions of it. I don't know how serious the negotiations have been, but it's one of those. It's one of those fights that is mouth-watering as a boxing fan. Like, it might not appeal to the mass casual audience and those who don't necessarily know who Okolie is, tucked away on DAZN now rather than being on Sky Sports. But in terms of a boxing fan, if you are tuning in for the sport, for the competitive fights, for the high-level action, Okolie's well positioned now within that, and to do it, as I say, is not the most experienced amateur fighter, someone who is, we hear it all the time, learning on the job. And he's done that. He's learned on the job whilst being fast-tracked to a degree. There's obviously talk from his promoter that he's been avoided by a few of these fighters, but what he's done is he's done things the right way. He's picked up wins at domestic level against domestic rivals, won a European title, the EBU European title, for anyone who's not sure. That's like the genuine one, not one of these fringe world organisation ones that get offered about. And then a genuine world title. Now, there will be his critics because of the previous performances, because of maybe the lack of actual like depth and quality names on his record, but from a fighter, he's done everything that's been asked of him, and his was the name that, when I put this out on Twitter, got a lot of praise. He's the biggest achiever of this class of 2016, and for that, I can't give him anything less than an A+. I would argue till I'm blue in the face for anyone that wants to knock him down on that ranking. I think that grade is fair. It's a fair reflection of what he's achieved so far, and if we're then looking beyond, and he's still got that potential to achieve even more at cruiserweight and physically fill out as a heavyweight and cause a lot of problems for, I'd say, the next generation of heavyweights once those titles get scattered and there's a bit of a free-for-all in the next few years. Very exciting indeed for Lawrence Okolie.